welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if this is your very first time here. My name is Megan. I am due in July with a baby girl. It's baby number 2 for us, and this is my first pregnancy update video. So I'm at the end of my first trimester now, kind of coming out of the first trimester fog, or like trying to placebo myself into thinking that I'm coming out of the fog. And I thought I would just kind of recap everything that's happened so far. So apologies if this is a bit of a longer video. I'd love to know in the comments whether you would prefer pregnancy updates like every trimester, every month. Let me know what interval is good. So I want to start at the very beginning with the 2-week wait symptoms, because I feel like when I got pregnant, I had immediate symptoms. And I don't know if it was just because I was thinking, you know, maybe I'm pregnant, but some of these were definitely like very concrete. So I knew pretty much right away. I was like, I'm pretty sure that I'm pregnant. So when I took the positive test, I was like, I knew it. So the two big ones for me that really tipped me off were a hugely increased appetite. Even like right after fertilization, I just wanted to eat everything and my stomach felt like it was eating itself and I needed so much food. And the other one was peeing when I sneezed. I know it's a little bit TMI, but I have never like peed when I sneezed outside of pregnancy. Even immediately postpartum, I never had that issue, but when I'm pregnant, it happens fairly frequently. So I was like probably 3 weeks pregnant, so like 1 week after fertilization, and I sneezed. I peed myself a little bit and I was like, oh, I think that's it. I was also having trouble sleeping and really vivid dreams, which is a very common pregnancy symptom, and just like really weird dreams, and they felt so real. Sometimes I would have like little details in my dreams that were so realistic, and like they weren't anything crazy or out of the norm where it would be like, oh, I put the laundry in my dream or whatever, and the next morning I wouldn't be able to remember, like, did I do that yesterday? Or was that just a really real dream? And that would happen a lot with just like little things. I also started going to the bathroom a lot in the middle of the night, which is something I experienced in my early pregnancy with Rowan. That was like one of the first signs that tipped me off that I might be pregnant. So when that started happening again, you know, little bells were going off in my head. I also had a little bit of congestion in the mornings, which I had in my first I also had a little bit of congestion in the morning, which I also had with my first pregnancy. So I don't know if that's just a coincidence or not, but something I noticed. I had cramps right around the fertilization time, and I knew because, you know, we had tried that like based on the timing, that's probably what those cramps were. So I was just hoping for not a chemical pregnancy, because I was like, I'm pretty sure it's at least trying in there. And then I started to crave savory foods. So I wanted things like a ham sandwich on Hawaiian bread, or actually a lot of the foods that I craved were like both sweet and savory. So I would want like a sweet potato that's like kind of a little bit of both, or like the ham on the sweet bread. I remember telling Matt, and this was like early November, so we weren't quite at like Thanksgiving time yet where I like would be thinking about this. It's like, oh, I just really want like Christmas ham on like a Hawaiian sweet roll. And he was like, you're pregnant. That's not something you would normally want, because normally I have such a sweet tooth, and with this pregnancy so far I have not wanted anything sweet, which I guess just leads me into food aversions, which is something that I have experienced all throughout the last, 12, 13 weeks. And I don't want anything sweet, which is such a bummer. It like doesn't sound good to me ever, and normally my favorite things are like chocolate and ice cream, and right now it just kind of like doesn't sound great. Another big one for me has been coffee, which is such a significant bummer because I'm such a coffee person, and normally like in non-pregnancy times, like thinking about like, ooh, what am I gonna do for my morning coffee? Like, what kind of creamer am I gonna use? Am I gonna put any spices in it? Am I gonna froth it up, hot or iced? Like that would get me out of bed in the morning. And my last pregnancy, I drank decaf, so I was able to continue that hobby. And you can drink at least 1 cup of coffee per day that's caffeinated safely. I just didn't for the most part, because I had a lot of caffeine sensitivity at the time, and I don't anymore because motherhood has made me desensitized. But I don't know, coffee just doesn't sound good to me anymore. I've maybe had 2 cups of coffee since I got pregnant, and I think they were both iced. Like hot coffee is just, I used to love it in the mornings and I can't. So I'm hoping that that goes away shortly, because that really is a part of my life that I enjoy. Also poultry, specifically turkey, which was kind of a bummer around Thanksgiving, but I didn't want anything to do with turkey, and even chicken to some extent. Like if I had chicken, it had to be really processed, like chicken tenders. Like I couldn't just sit down and eat a chicken breast. I felt pretty nauseous through this whole trimester, and so those aversions just like kind of made it worse, to the point where like I haven't thrown up, which I know was so incredibly lucky. But also, sometimes it kind of feels like it sucks because sometimes I just wish that I would puke so that I could feel better, and I never do. But what I do a lot is gag and dry heave. And so sometimes when I see or think of a food that I'm averse to, like, oh, on Christmas there was, I don't want to think about it too much because it's still kind of like, there was a chocolate pie, like a chocolate with the Oreo crust, and I saw the box to it and like was in the bathroom dry heaving so hard that I was peeing myself. TMI again, but hey, somebody's got to talk about the realness of pregnancy, right? I think the nausea overall has been the hardest, well, the second hardest part of this pregnancy, which I'll get into the hemorrhage thing later because I've talked about it a little bit, but not like super in depth on here. But yeah, the nausea and the lack of energy. I feel like it didn't hit me that hard in my first pregnancy. And maybe it's just because I'm chasing a toddler around now and it's harder to keep up with him. And I feel bad because I feel like he's not getting, like I can't match his energy anymore when we're playing, which is so sad. And I really hope and pray that that goes away eventually. But right now I have spent so much of this trimester just on the couch because I have felt so sick, and it's all day long. It's just, I feel queasy and off all day long, and I get really dizzy when I stand up too fast. So it's been a lot of laying down, which obviously doesn't make me feel great emotionally. Talking to my therapist about this, and she was telling me about biofeedback cycles, I think is what they're called, where like essentially my body is behaving as if I am depressed because I'm sick. Like I'm doing a lot of laying down, I'm not going outside very much, I'm not exercising very much. And so in response, my body and my brain talk to each other and they're like, oh, we're acting sad, we must be sad, here are more sad chemicals. And then you get a little bit depressed and it kind of sucks. I'm very thankful to be in therapy because that's been a huge part, and I am on medication just like as a regular part of my mental health maintenance. And thankfully my medication was one that is pregnancy safe. So I am managing it, but that's been challenging because I feel like when you can't get a lot done, especially when you're somebody who has more of like an achiever mindset and is always like going for a goal and like kind of, you know, somewhat unhealthfully puts your worth into what you're producing, when all of a sudden you can't do much, I feel like I just lost a part of myself, and my confidence hasn't been great because I've just been like, feel like a piece of poop all the time. Like I'm just a potato on the couch. I feel like I'm not accomplishing anything. So that's been a big mindset shift for me this pregnancy. It's been tough on my mental health, and it's something that I have been trying to work through and trying to give myself a little bit more grace with, but it's hard because I'm really hard on myself and I don't tend to give myself much of a break ever. So work in progress. So I said that the nausea was the second hardest part of the pregnancy, and I want to talk about the hardest part because most of you probably know this because I've mentioned it like briefly in videos. I had a subchorionic hemorrhage at 7 weeks, I think. Trigger warning right here, I'm gonna talk about bleeding and miscarriage. So if that's something you're not comfortable with, skip maybe 2 minutes as I tell this story because I don't want you to hear anything that's gonna trigger you. But anyways, I was out shopping with my mother-in-law and I started bleeding very heavily. And I remember booking it to the bathroom in this big mall that we were in and just saying out loud over and over again, like, this can't be happening, this can't be happening. Because when you're pregnant and you're in early pregnancy where there's a higher, you know, chance of miscarriage, when you start bleeding that heavily, like you immediately are like, I just lost my baby. And I can't even explain. Unfortunately, I know a lot of you know, and I'm so sorry to anybody who's experienced this pain, but the depth of that sadness of thinking, or when you really have lost a child, it's just, so I was just numb walking to this bathroom, and I got in the stall and I'm just sobbing. I'm just absolutely sobbing. I'm like, this is it. I called Matt on the way home and I was like, I think I lost the baby. Like I was just crying my eyes out. Like, I'm so sorry, which obviously it wouldn't have been my fault, but I still just, it's a lot of emotions to process. But then that night, the bleeding stopped. And I was like, well, that's weird. Still was feeling a lot of grief because I didn't really want to get my hopes up that maybe it could be okay. But I knew that true miscarriage, the bleeding gets worse and you're clotting and you're cramping, and I wasn't clotting or cramping. And so it was a 3-day weekend when this happened. It happened on the Friday. And so I had to wait through the Friday, the Saturday, and the Sunday to finally call my OB on Monday. And they said, come in, we want to do an ultrasound and see what's going on. And we got to the ultrasound, and it was like an internal ultrasound. And I remember the ultrasound tech just being like, there's your baby's heartbeat. And Matt and I just both looking at each other and crying because it felt like too much to even hope. And so when we found out that she was healthy, it was just overwhelming, because all I could think about that weekend obviously was just like that I had miscarried, and it was a lot of intrusive thoughts, and I couldn't really get away from it. And I'm so incredibly grateful that that wasn't the case, but it really gave me a whole new perspective on even just like the tiniest fraction of what going through something like a miscarriage would feel like. And so my heart goes out to anybody who is experiencing or has experienced that, because it was truly awful. And I think a lot of that anxiety has kind of tried to carry into my pregnancy, and thankfully I have a wonderful therapist who has helped me work on coping mechanisms and grounding exercises to kind of combat the intrusive thoughts, because what she said is like our brain is a computer and it wants to solve puzzles. And so when you're not like really actively focused on something and your brain's not solving a puzzle, it creates one for itself to solve. And that's where a lot of intrusive thoughts come in, because we have these like scary scenarios we think of our head because our brain just wants to like compute and come out with solutions. And so some of the things that I've been doing are like grounding exercises, where I'll get an intrusive thought and I'll think, okay, name all of the animals you can think of that start with the letter P in 30 seconds. And I give my brain a puzzle to work on, and it kind of helps. So that's been something that's been hugely helpful for me, but definitely still something that has taken a lot of work, because it's been scary just since then, knowing like that's what it would feel like if that happened. So that's been a whole thing. Then I went in the next week at 8 weeks for my official dating ultrasound. And it was really funny because I got the two ultrasounds like a week apart, and obviously normally you don't get two that close together. And so it was crazy to see like how much the baby changed just from 1 week to another. Like I'll insert pictures here. The first time it was just like a little blob, and the second time like we could see little arm nubs. Like it was wild. She was measuring 3 days behind. So my estimated due date based on my last period would be July 18th, but she was measuring as if her due date would be July 21st. So my doctor kept the 18th due date because she said it wasn't enough of a variance to change the due date. But there is like a little window there. So I'm trying to prepare myself in case I go overdue again, that like maybe her due date shouldn't actually be until the 21st. Don't know. But yeah, that was another internal ultrasound, and they were able to see the hematoma from the hemorrhage that I'd had, and they said that it was shrinking. That was really good, because I was obviously scared that I would start bleeding again. And even if I knew it was probably from that hemorrhage or hematoma or whatever you want to call it, it still wouldn't have felt great, especially like not knowing for sure, like seeing on an ultrasound that everything's okay. But luckily my body just kind of reabsorbed the blood, and basically what they told me was there was a vein that didn't connect properly to the pregnancy when everything was forming to support the pregnancy, and it eventually found its way and like attached properly or like died off. I don't know how exactly that works, but basically it wasn't attached correctly, so it was just kind of spurting, and then it resolved itself. So no sign of it now at my last ultrasound, which was at 12 weeks, which we just had. But before I talk about that, I want to talk about gender, because we found out the baby's gender very, very early. Like I said, we're having a girl. Her name is going to be Juniper, going to join her older brother Rowan. So I've got my two little shrubs. And a lot of people asked how I found out so early, because a lot of doctors can't even tell you until 10 weeks if you choose to do the NIPT, which we didn't do because it's very expensive. But there is a company called Sneak Peek, and this is not sponsored in any way, but I used them for Rowan's pregnancy and for Juniper's pregnancy, and they have been accurate both times. And basically I went to a midwifery, and the midwife drew my blood and sent it into Sneak Peek, and they looked at the DNA and were able to tell me that we were having a girl at 8 weeks, which is crazy. And I think now they say they can do it even at 7, but I was 8 weeks, 3 days when we did it. I was over the moon. I honestly was like telling myself that we were gonna have another boy, because I really did want a daughter, because I know like I have the experience with my son, like the mother-son bond is so amazing. I'm so grateful I get to have it. And now I get to experience both of those types of bonds. And if you've been on this channel for a while, you probably remember that I experienced some gender disappointment with him, which now I feel awful for, which try not to beat myself up, because emotions are emotions, and how you deal with them says more about your character than if they initially arise. But I was scared of having that again, and just kind of having to work through that emotionally felt like a lot when I already kind of felt like I was at a breaking point with the nausea and the tiredness, and this pregnancy just being overall harder than my first one. But we are having a girl, and so if you've seen the gender reveal video, you saw my very emotional reaction to that. And I'm just so excited that we get to have one of each. I'm so stoked about it. And honestly, a lot of it for me was like, I wanted to design a girl nursery and buy girl clothes and like have the opposite experience, because I already did the boy thing, so that'll be fun. And I also think it will be really special in the same way that it will be special to have an adult son, to have an adult daughter. It's just, you get to take those relationships with you forever. So I feel very blessed that I get to experience, you know, both sides of that. Then going into my 12-week ultrasound, I was so nervous to go to this ultrasound. And I think it's just because, you know, the doctor had been telling us all along, like, don't tell anybody until 12 weeks, don't tell anybody until 12 weeks. Obviously, we did not listen to that. I think we announced it like 6 weeks or something like that, just because I wanted to share this with all of you guys and with our support system, our friends and family. And if something had happened, like, I would want everybody there to rally around us rather than like kind of trying to deal with it myself. So if you choose to wait, totally valid, but that just wasn't the right path for us. But the messaging I was getting from her saying that was like, you're not safe until 12 weeks. And obviously you're never safe, like something could always happen. But after the first trimester, your chances of miscarriage go down significantly. And I think even more after like 14 or 16 weeks. So I had this in my mind as kind of like the first goalpost to get to, of like, if we can get to 12 weeks, then I'll feel a little bit safer and a little bit better. And after having the hemorrhage, I obviously was feeling very anxious about everything. So not only was there that, but it was also the nuchal translucency scan. So I wanted that to go well. And if you don't know, the nuchal translucency scan is a test they do in addition to blood work, which I actually had done today, that measures the fluid like behind the baby's neck, and it can help tell the likelihood of any chromosomal abnormalities. And so I wanted that to go well. And then also I knew that we would likely be able to get a hint about the gender. And even though we had the sneak peek test, it's like 99.9% accurate. I was like, what if we're that 0.1%? But just like using nub theory, the tech was like, you know, I can't tell for sure, but this does look like a little girl to me. And she was like, the sneak peek test is almost never ever wrong. I've never seen one that was wrong. So pretty confident we're having a girl. I mean, it was crazy to see her now at 12 weeks after seeing 7 and then 8, where she was just like a little blob. And now she's like 2¼ inches long from head to booty and just moving around, and we could see 5 fingers and 5 toes and her heart beating, and we could see her little face in the little 3D ultrasound that they did. I'll pop the picture in here so you can see like the little eyes and nose and mouth. And it was just crazy. I feel like for me, pregnancy doesn't really hit me until I see the baby move in an ultrasound. And it was the same thing with Rowan at the 12-week NT scan. When I saw him moving, it was like, oh my gosh, like this is not just a food baby, I'm actually pregnant. So that was crazy and wonderful. And we had the sweetest ultrasound tech who really took her time and showed us everything and sent us so many pictures. So that was really special. If you can hear the heat that just came on, I apologize, but it is very cold in here, so I'm not gonna do anything about it. I'm trying to think if there are any other symptoms that I've been experiencing that I can tell you guys about. Oh, increased discharge. That's really annoying. Constantly have to wear a panty liner. Oh, I also did feel her kick. And I know it's so early, but I swear to you, that is what I'm feeling. And I can tell because A, I've had obviously a pregnancy before, and so I know exactly what it feels like. I know it's in the right area, like down low where my uterus is. And also it's consistently been in the same place. So I know it's not likely just gas bubbles in my stomach. So I felt her at like 11 weeks and 6 days, which I know sounds insane, but I promise you, and even the ultrasound tech said, she was like, people will tell you that it's too early, but it's not. Like, you're a small person and this is your second pregnancy and you know what it feels like, and you're probably feeling hers. So that was super exciting, and I can't wait for those little kicks to get stronger, because I feel like, I don't know, it's just a really fun kind of connection. Oh, this isn't necessarily a symptom, but something that I wanted to talk about is that a lot of you guys know that I'm like a big workout person. I'm not like hugely fit normally or anything, but just for my mental health, it's been so important for me to consistently work out. And I have not been able to do that almost at all this first trimester. I've only done 2 workouts since I found out I was pregnant. One of them was yesterday, 2 days ago. and I am so weak now because I've just been sitting on a couch and I lost a lot of my muscle tone. And so like, oh, I did an arm workout yesterday with Tone It Up. I used the Tone It Up prenatal program. Oh my gosh, I am so sore. And that freaks me out because I'm not necessarily too worried about my body image this time. With Rowan, I was very nervous about what my body would look like and like the unknowns and just body dysmorphia. I didn't feel like myself and I didn't feel like I had an accurate picture of me in my head through that pregnancy. But since I went through the recovery process and now I know like, okay, eventually I'll feel more like me. No matter what I look like, I will feel like my body is my own again. I'm not as worried about that, but what does worry me is that I feel like having a really strong base of like, I had been working out 3 to 4 times a week and I had a lot of endurance built up by the time it was time to give birth. And I think that was hugely important to my unmedicated birth experience with Rowan. I almost said natural birth, and I don't want to say that because all birth is natural, but sometimes the words just, you know? So yeah, I feel like I'm starting from a place of disadvantage now, and I'm hoping now that I've like kind of started to feel like a little bit better, now the nausea doesn't hit me in like full swing until like 4 p.m. usually, unless I have to wake up early, which honestly I rarely do because Matt has been taking Rowan in the morning so I can sleep in, which is just the biggest, most unbelievable blessing that he is able to do that for me. But yeah, since the nausea is getting a little bit better in the mornings and afternoons, I do want to try to start working out, even just lightly, like 2 to 3. No, I want to do 3. I'm going to say 3 times a week. And I want to get to that point where I feel really strong again because I feel like that was such an asset to me in birth, and my body was like so ready to do things and like persevere and keep going. And I also think it helped me mentally because I had been going through all these workouts where, you know, 25 minutes in I would be like, I can't do this anymore, and I'd have to like psych myself up and be like, yes you can, finish strong. And then I did that for 10.5 hours during birth. So that's something that I'm hoping to work on as we go into the 2nd trimester. Honestly, I'm not feeling that much better. I have good days and bad days, or like okay days and bad days. I definitely still don't feel anywhere close to normal, but I did recently get a prescription for, it's a nausea medication. It's not dicleptin. It's, oh, I'm totally blanking on the name of it, but my doctor gave me a prescription and I haven't taken any yet. I kind of have them as like a safety net, I guess, because my insurance really limits the amount that I can have because I guess it's a more expensive medication. So I can't like take them regularly, but at least if it continues to be really bad, I have that option going forward. I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to take that option, but I am thankful that I at least have that to fall back on if I really need to. Oh, you guys probably want to see the belly. Let me do a little belly shot. Oh, turn my light off. I finally got a ring light because Washington is so dark that I've been having a hard time filming lately. Okay, so here is my 12.5-week baby bump. It is a lot bigger than my 12.5-week bump with Rowan for sure. I feel like this is what I looked like at like maybe 17 weeks with Rowan. I have to wear maternity pants now, as you can see, because none of my regular pants fit me. Yep, here's baby girl in here. So I think that covers everything in my first trimester, from very beginning 2-week wait symptoms all the way to my appointment, which was yesterday. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll make sure that I answer as many as I can. And again, please let me know what the right interval is for pregnancy updates, because I've never really watched a lot of pregnancy updates and I don't know how often I'm supposed to be doing them. I know some people do them every week, which I feel like might be a little bit excessive for you guys because I know there's other kinds of content you want to see too. But do you want once a trimester, once a month, once every 2 weeks? Let me know down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're not yet subscribed, I would love it if you would click that button down there and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future updates. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you guys and I'm so happy that you are here with me through it. I love you guys a lot and I'll see you all in my next video.